So I just said, but when we first met,
Yeah.
you introduced yourself as a professional vampire.
I did.
And
we tried to guess what it could have been.
we did, but
The best we came up was
what did
a genuine vampire.
yeah, you just love blood.
Yeah, if only.
But we were very intrigued, obviously, to find out
Yes.
what you do. So can you simply explain what a professional vampire does?
It's a phlebotomist. So it's someone who will take your blood and then I send it off to a lab to be analysed. So when you go to the GP and they say you need a blood test, you often will end up at the phlebotomist. But it's just a not such posh word, really.
It's a word that everybody can understand. Because if you said to me, I can't even say the word.
Phlebotomist. Yeah, it took me a while too.
I wouldn't have any.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have Scooby-Doo.
I've never heard of it either.
Yeah.
No.
So you say when you go to a GP, they'll have an in-house phlebotomist
Usually,
that takes your blood sort of thing, is that it?
depending on the size of the practice.
Okay.
But if you go to hospitals, they'll often have like a phlebotomist coming around. If it's not, or sometimes it's the nurse, HCA, or even doctors do it. But it is just it's the skill is called phlebotomy.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I was a client of yours,
Yeah.
what would be the process?
Okay, what in terms of the phlebotomy or the nutritional therapy?
In terms of everything that you do.
Okay.
Well, look, I'll start it off. I jumped onto your LinkedIn and your website and everything. And
Okay.
the nice little catchphrase to sort of round it and summarize it all is increase your energy levels, productivity, enhance resilience, and reclaim your social life, all without compromising your health and well-being.
Yeah,
which is a
that's
lovely
what
little-
I said. I wrote that.
Which is a lovely little strap line. So what is it you do?
So I empower ambitious individuals living with chronic illness and or burnout to basically feel better because you feel so rubbish. And sometimes there's so much information out there and I just want to cut through the bump
Yeah.
and make it more easier for you to kind of know what to do.
How do you do it?
So depending on the service that people use, but a lot of it is I assess you where you're at. So what is your health history? What are your current symptoms? How are you feeling? What's going on inside your body and outside? So external stresses, internal stresses. And then I basically create a picture. And if I use testing, so this is where the phlebotomy comes in, I use testing to help build the picture. And then based on all the data, so I gather the data. This is my, you could call it my KPIs. It's gathering the data. And then I look at what's going on and I determine what bodily systems are out of balance. What is the root cause of what you're feeling? So you could come to me and say, Claire, I've got chronic fatigue syndrome. I'm like, grand. But in a way, it's not that it doesn't matter what you have. I want to know, well, what are the symptoms? Where's it coming from? What's causing it? And I think in the medical model, we very much focus on here's a symptom, we treat the symptom. But I'm like, no, we want to treat the root cause because if we treat the root cause, we're more likely to recover, we're more likely to feel better for longer and less likely to sort of rely on medication for long term.
I think, and we'll probably get into this, but I think that definitely rings true because I think a lot of the time what we're doing at the moment within the NHS, you go to the NHS, you go to your GP and they will treat the symptoms. They'll give you some sort of drug, some sort of pharmacy, but they won't actually think about where these problems have actually arisen from. So is that the difference between what you do and what, going to your generalist sort of GP would do?
We also have to remember though, and I think because I was a children's nurse, I sit in both camps. I kind of understand both sides. Then there isn't the money, there isn't the time within the NHS nowadays. It is getting more and more and more like this. Simple thing, this is why I became a professional vampire, was because what I was finding is that I'd be like, right, I need to send a client for blood tests because I really want to know, what minerals, vitamins, where's the deficiencies. And I send them to the GP with a letter. Some GPs would take it on board and do them. Some wouldn't. Some would only do part of the bloods because it depends on, time, finances. But what
Just haven't got the resources.
They haven't got the resources. No. And it is constantly being squeezed because they're just, we could probably go down the road of austerity and underfunding
the
for
election.
Years. The election. Let's not start on the election. So, yeah.
Okay, so if I came to you, you say ambitious individuals.
Yeah.
I would like to say I'm ambitious. I am an individual.
Yeah.
And I am suffering from burnout.
Yeah.
What would you do?
So first things first, we look at where are you currently at? What are the symptoms that you're showing me? Is it fatigue, lethargic, getting to the end of the day and collapsing, gut issues? You know, what is going on?
I would say, let's say, I maybe not as quick as I used to be.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's say, so I'm a little bit slow with the things that I do.
Yeah.
Maybe like, feel tired in myself, let's say, and I'm probably the speed is one. You know,
Okay.
Maybe let's say start of the year I was a lot quicker, and now I'm not so much with what I do.
Okay. So depending on where you're at, I think with things like burnout, I'd probably be looking at a longer term kind of program, and we'd be really starting at what are you eating. So I would start. There's my 5 pillars, but eating is where I sort of start with, because for a lot of people, blood sugar balance is the main place to start, because what we find is that we're on this blood sugar roller coaster, and it's not just about diabetics. It's that we all are kind of, juggling the blood sugar roller coaster. So I look at what are you eating and how can we create more balance so that your energy can be sustained throughout the day. So that's probably the first place that I would start.
How was my diet? I would say pretty good, but I do have a sweet tooth.
Yeah.
Definitely. I probably eat more in the afternoons, in the evenings, than I do in the mornings. I sort of try to fast, maybe I'd say until sort of 12, 1 o'clock, but it's not so much a fast because I do have like a protein shake.
Yeah. So
first thing when I get into work.
Not really a fast then.
So it's not really a fast.
It's not really a fast.
But I tell myself it's a fast. Good diet. Lots of fruit and veg. Try to cut out a lot more of the processed foods.
You
that
don't
sort
eat a lot
of thing.
of meat, do you?
Don't eat any meat. Well, I do eat meat. Sorry, I do have to. I don't prepare meat at home. Basically,
okay, sure.
So
you don't have any red meat.
Don't eat any red meat. I'll have a lot of eggs. I like my cheese. I like cheese. But I do eat fish and chicken occasionally. But like I said, I don't prepare it, so it's not something I have very regularly.
Okay, so I guess it comes down to what is on your plate, though. So it sounds like from what you've shared that there's some really good stuff there, so which is fab. But when we look at our plates, we want to be having half of it what we call non-starchy veg. So fibre, we don't get enough fibre in this country. So non-starchy veg, green beans, broccoli, cabbage, things like that, mushrooms, tomatoes. Then we want a quarter protein, good quality protein if possible. If you can afford, sustainably raised, organic, that would always be better. But I also appreciate the cost element of that. And then complex carbohydrates. So this is where we're looking at more brown rice, brown pasta, starchy vegetables, your peas, your carrots, your potatoes. And eating that will keep you fuller for longer because you've got your fats, your proteins, your carbohydrates, and everything breaks down at a slower, so fats and proteins break down slower than carbohydrates. So by doing that, you're going to be more sustained and keep fuller for longer.
Is diet quite a big, it's obviously a huge part of it, but is that quite a big problem for most people that come to you that maybe don't realise how influential diet is? What do most typical sort of people's diets look like that you have to change?
I think it's an interesting one, because when clients come to me, I think there's this assumption that they're eating well. And then when we break it down, it's not, they've just not put the components together in the right way.
Okay.
So it will be like, I'm having a protein shake for breakfast.
Guilty.
Or cereal for breakfast. I think we've been sold the idea that cereal is healthy.
God, I was sold that.
That was you about a year ago.
It's actually, maybe since I started working here, I was like, I shouldn't be eating Cheerios in the morning. I thought I was good as gold with Cheerios, but no.
I mean, those are some interesting things to talk about. What that's a great example, isn't it? Cereal in the morning.
Cereal in the morning.
That's like the
we have
marketing,
been sold.
isn't it?
The marketing.
What else?
Hats off to them.
Yeah. What else is a big one?
Porridge is an interesting one. So people will be like, but I eat porridge. And you'll be like, okay, but actually, so what we're now seeing with programs like Zoe is that we have individual responses to foods, but I still think there are still a lot of common ground foods. And for some people, porridge, I'm one of these people. If I just ate porridge, I'm starving an hour later and I have to eat now because my blood sugars have just basically gone lower than my body likes. But if you put fiber in, so if you put chia seeds, flax seeds, nuts, fruit, yogurt, protein, a good protein source, so nuts and yogurt, it actually can sustain you till lunchtime. So sometimes it's looking at what am I eating and adding in. I think we can get so confused with what is the wrong thing to eat, what's the right thing to eat, that we all just go, "Wah."
Yeah.
And actually, let's just keep it simple. If you like porridge, okay, could you add some yogurt and nuts and fruit and just balance it out? If you really like your protein shakes, can we make sure that it's balanced with veggies? I mean, I'm assuming the protein shake is it a powder and water?
Yeah, literally.
Yeah. Could we add in? Oh, it's Huel. Yeah. So could we make sure you're adding in veggies?
Yeah.
You know, fruit, veg.
So what would be a good healthy breakfast as an example?
And that's quite a difficult question because I'm getting the sense that everybody's very different, they're very individual with this sort of stuff.
You have to work with the person in front of you. But I would always say savoury, protein-rich savoury breakfasts are good. So, well, I say that, actually this morning I had a nutty banana bread. So it's made from ground nuts, one banana, you know, reduced sugar, Greek yogurt, like thick yogurt with bacteria in it. So I'm getting the probiotic. And then I had some strawberries from my garden. Not everyone's got strawberries in their gardens, but, you know, but a lot of the time, so I'm gluten-free. It's I found out this year, I've been gluten intolerant for many years, but this year I found out it was actually an allergy. I was like, oops.
Should have known that a bit sooner.
So I try like not to buy too many gluten-free products because they're heavily, heavily processed. So I'll make quinoa bread. So that's ground quinoa and made into a bread. So you've got your fiber, your carbs, your protein, and I'll have with eggs, mushrooms, tomatoes. So that's a really rich, you know, I've got protein, I've got complex carbs. It keeps me full till lunchtime. I don't have to snack. But I think the problem is it depends how much time you've got. So if a client comes to me and says, I'm really busy, you know, I've got kids, I'm trying to sort them out, what would you recommend? It could be something like a chia seed pudding, which you make the night before, you get up and you just eat. You're not going to probably be trying to make scrambled eggs and stuff if you're trying to sort the kids out. I don't have children, so I have a bit more like flexibility in the morning. Like, what is it that you've got the ability to do?
It's really difficult, isn't it? Because I'm here thinking like, where would I have learned all of this information? Like, why don't I know it? But you don't talk about this at school, do you?
It's not taught.
Or did I miss that?
No.
Yeah, not so much.
No.
But it's. I feel like I have been on a bit of a journey learning a lot of this stuff, and I do enjoy it through, you know, the sport and everything. So that's what it's had the influence. But there's so much information out there which all just contradicts itself. It seems a lot of the time. So it's really difficult to understand who's saying the right things and who's saying the wrong things. And I'm sure like every opinion's almost quite controversial, isn't it? Like depending on how far you go with it. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that might say some of your stuff that you're saying is controversial and vice versa. So how do you navigate around that? Because that's something which I struggle with a lot on social media.
It's a really good question. You know, I would say I try and make it as normal and as accessible as I possibly can. You know, I think it gets really confusing when you look at, you've got keto and other diets that I can't think of right now. Atkins, yeah, you know, high carb, low carb, high fat, low fat. And I just am like, right, what's going to work for you? Because at the end of the day, I want to make myself redundant. I want my clients to come to me and I give them the tools to do this long term. So what tools do you need to keep you going long term? Let's make it accessible, doable for you. And so that's what I try and do, is just be like, let's just normalize healthy eating.
I think a big part of that as well is, like you say, with these diets, they were once a really big thing, weren't they? And I think they did work just on a very short-term basis. And I think the plan now is everyone realised that they work on a short-term basis, and you've actually got to find something which is balanced and is actually sustainable. And that's the hardest thing about a diet, isn't it, really?
But I think it's shifting away from terminology of diet and actually going, how do I nourish my body? What does my body need? And I think what I am seeing, and I've experienced this myself, is the disconnect between body and mind. So we're like constantly told, keep going, keep going, keep going. We're busy. We're all sort of probably since COVID hanging on a thread anyway. And we've forgotten to check in with our bodies and go, body, what are you telling me? So often if you're craving things, it's a sign that something else is going on. It's our body's way of telling us. It's like a warning sign in your car. You know, actually, you know, things like, okay, you're craving chocolate. Maybe that's, you need some more magnesium, or you've got restless legs. Maybe you need magnesium. Are you bloated? Well, are you eating your food correctly? It could be that you're not chewing enough. You're not sitting down at a table and enjoying your food, you know, all these things. And this is what when I talk to clients, I'm picking out what are these red flags. So I spoke with someone this week who said to me, Claire, I get to the end of the day, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to exercise. I don't want to do hobbies. You know, I don't really want to cook anymore. And I used to love all of this stuff.
Goodness me.
And I was like, okay, we've got a red flag here.
Yeah.
I was like, do you think you're burnt out? And they were like, actually, I think I might be. Because it's all these things that we push past and we go, but that's normal. That's how everyone's feeling. And we forget to check in and go, but actually, is this how I want to feel? What is my body trying to tell me? And what does it need? Our bodies are very clever. Yeah. And they will tell us if we listen.
But it's recognising what they're telling you, isn't it? That's the difficult thing, and knowing where that comes from. I don't think anybody knows that.
Yeah.
So that's really valuable. But sticking on nutrition, I've seen, again, straight back to social media, there's been a real shift from like the demonisation of salt, and then now that is the demonisation towards sugar, and salt is, you know, the good. You know, what is there a lot of truth in that? Because it sounds to me what we're talking about at the start was like your blood sugar levels. Yeah. That's something which comes into play so much more now than just calories in and out.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes. It's all fascinating. I don't like demonization of food. I don't believe it's good or bad. I believe it's what's beneficial and what's not so beneficial for you. And I think there was a massive push against salt because of processed foods. If you're cooking from scratch, we do actually need salt in our lives. It is needed. But if you're cooking from scratch or, you know, reasonably balanced diet, you're fine. What we're finding with sugar, I think it comes from the obesity epidemic. And what we found is that they went massively heavy on low fat. Was it 80s, 90s?
Yeah.
But nothing changed. We saw cardiovascular disease rise. We've seen obesity rates rise, especially in children, which I find really hard, you know, with my background. And now what we're finding out that it's not fat. We actually need fat in our lives. It's the blood sugar roller coaster. And when we say sugar, it's when we have the constant up and downs. So I don't want to demonize sugar, but I think what happened is people took fat out of things and put sugar in them and put sweeteners in them. That's the issue. And so we've been eating this heavily carbohydrate. We've kind of gone more carbohydrate. So when carbohydrates break down, it produces glucose. And that glucose gets pushed into your cells and used as energy, you know, fuels our batteries, our ATP in the mitochondria. But when we have too much glucose and the blood sugars rise quicker than we'd like. So that's when, if you just eat a really heavy carbohydrate-based meal, so typical example, meal deal from a supermarket, choose your supermarket.
Any one of them.
Any one of them. Usually sandwich, fizzy pop, packet of crisps is your bog standard, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's going to break down pretty quick in the body. Your blood sugars levels rise higher than the body would like. You release insulin, which is a hormone, which pushes the glucose into the cells. But then you get too much because it's gone
too high
too quickly. It goes lower than the body would like. And the brain needs a constant supply of glucose. It's very glucose heavy. And so when it drops lower than the body would like, it suddenly starts screaming. Your brain will go, eat, 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 eat. And that's where you start grabbing your biscuits, your cakes, your chocolate, because your body's gone into survival mode.
Yeah.
Right.
Whereas if you put in the protein and the fats with it that break down at a different rate, you get more balance. So it's trying, ideally, yes, let's move away from carbohydrate heavy meals, which has become a very Western diet thing, and bring more balance in. But again, it's trying not to demonize sugar.
Again, because it is balance, isn't it? Really, if you demonize sugar and say you can't have sugar, what are you going to do? You're going to want sugar, aren't you?
Yeah. I was actually listening to a podcast recently, and it was of Emily, the nutritionist. I don't know if you've seen her on social media, but one of the questions was, should I just not be eating sweets then? Should I not eat sweets? Because the person that was asking the question loves sweets. I'm also a big lover of a sweet.
As am I.
And she was saying that if you love it, you should not cut it out, because that brings you happiness, obviously, but it's the time in the day that you should be eating it. So if you're really hungry, eating a packet of Haribos is not going to help you physically, but also mentally, because like you were just saying, that your body's really hungry, you have that spike of sugar, you go your blood go really, really high, and then you crash, but like you feel really rubbish in your head, because then you're like, oh, I've just eaten the sweets, now I'm really hungry, now I feel worse. So yeah, she was saying that you shouldn't cut things out that make you happy, which sweets and chocolate and things like that do.
How do you keep those things in your life then? When is the best time to have them?
So always with a meal. So you would make sure you have your kind of balanced meal first, and then afterwards.
Yeah.
That's probably the best time. And you will find, and what I find with clients and what's happened to myself, is you find you eat it less and less. You don't, because often people are craving the sugar, whether that's because of the imbalanced blood sugars, maybe there's an imbalance within the gut microbiome, whether it's stress, there's all these things that contribute to the need for sugar. And sometimes when we create that balance in the body, you suddenly find, actually, I don't want it as much. And I find that, even like as a woman though, different times of the month, you might find that you're craving different things. And so having a little bit with a meal is absolutely, do that. It's when it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon and you're picking up a cookie.
And you just eat that.
And you just eat that. Yeah. That's where it's like, actually, no.
Gosh, I'm learning so much already, Claire.
Is there a time of day which has a big influence on that sort of thing as well? You see things, don't eat too late at night, because that will...
Don't eat too late at night.
Is that it?
Yeah.
I nailed it.
I always say to clients, if possible, stop eating 3 to 4 hours before bedtime.
Right.
Because if you think about it, we are in the culture now of most of us will have our main meals at tea time or, the evening. And of course, if you don't do anything, if you just sit on the sofa and go to bed, well, you've got basically that glucose. It's like, well, now what do I do? And excess glucose gets stored as fat. So if you can give yourself that time, 3 to 4 hours, it allows everything to digest before you end up kind of going to bed, because you've also got the flip side of high blood sugar levels can spike cortisol, our stress hormone, and cortisol and melatonin being the sleep hormone, work opposite each other. So by the end of the day, melatonin should be higher. At the beginning of the day, cortisol should be higher, and they sort of cross over in the day. So if you are creating a system where there's loads of cortisol, so it's not just blood sugar levels, it's what you're watching. It's perhaps if you're on your emails till you go to bed, perhaps you've got your phone in bed. I'm a big advocate of taking your phone out of the bedroom. All these things will disrupt melatonin, which means you're not going to sleep so well, which then will impact your blood sugar regulation the next day. And you probably find that you're grabbing more carbohydrate-based foods because you're tired and you're wanting kind of the more sugary foods. You kind of want that dopamine hit, that serotonin hit.
It's difficult. The time of day is a big one that I always think about, because I get home from work, I'll go maybe have a little snack or something, go out and run or do some sort of sport, and then I'll eat quite late. So that'll be 8, sometimes like as late as 9 o'clock, and then I'll go to bed almost straight after. How do you get around that? Do I just force myself to eat earlier, or is it the type of things that I can eat before bed?
I think it's
or is that always going to be a not the right thing to do?
I think it's it's trying to balance it, because if you're going to do exercise, you don't want to eat a big meal before you exercise, because that obviously has issues. Could you potentially have a smaller meal at that time of day, and maybe if you want a larger meal, move it to lunchtime.
Yeah.
So that you've got a bit more of the balance there.
Okay, so talk to us about the sort of blood testing side of things, because that's how you introduce yourself as the vampire, Claire the vampire.
Yeah.
How does that influence sort of how you manage and deal with clients, and sort of what results come back from that?
So I use it as a tool basically to help me understand where the deficiencies are within the body. So depending on the individual, so I have 3 packages. So my top package does include testing as standard, whereas my other 2 packages don't. But if someone comes to me and is like, actually, I would like to include testing, then we can have a conversation. Or if I feel that it would be really useful for them to have a test, there's kind of 2 ways. I can do it myself because it's quicker. But if they want to go to the GP, I can write a letter and ask the GP if they're going to do it. It's just not guaranteed that will be done. But it's very much used, especially because I recommend supplements as well. So I can, if someone comes to me and is like, I don't want testing, or I don't want to pay the extra, I can make an educated guess based on my training and my knowledge of what's going on.
It's just not going to be as accurate.
But it's not going to be as accurate. Yeah. So I use the blood testing. I don't just do blood testing. I can access stool, urine, DNA testing. That is a fascinating one. Nutrigenomics and
Yeah.
DNA. That is like,
Goodness
that's
me.
a whole nother like probably podcast on that one. There's all sorts of testing out there. I mean, it's incredible. I'm constantly coming across new companies and new tests. So it's basically, if the person's in front of me, I will start with the basics, and a full blood panel is a good place to start. And then if they've got certain, perhaps gut issues, or we start working together and things aren't quite progressing as I'd like, I might be like, look, let's do further testing to kind of get a better idea. Or if I feel like with supplements, I really want to know where they're at, I will do testing so I can be more accurate in the supplements that I recommend.
That's good. So then we've kind of spoken about with the tests, then come the results, and then you can plan around what needs to be sort of done in terms of nutrition and supplementation.
Yeah.
So supplementation, I guess that's a really big part of your business, and actually working out what sort of supplements people need and what their deficiencies are.
Definitely.
What are the most common deficiencies?
Magnesium.
Oh, really?
B12. Sometimes like ferritin, folate. But then it goes back. So I'm not one to just say take a supplement. I want to know, okay, well, what's going on? Why are you not absorbing? So when I get blood test results back, the question at the back of my head is like, well, why are those levels low? What's going on? What are you not absorbing? So that I can make a better decision on where I want you to go. I know there's this thing, they'll say a lot of people are deficient in magnesium and vitamin D, which is true. But sometimes I want to know, well, how deficient are you? Because there are different. So a lot of the supplements I use are therapeutic doses. They're higher doses than perhaps you'd get in a supermarket.
Really?
So that's where it's really useful to know what else is going on. Also, I want to know what medicine are you on, because there are interactions between medication and supplements. So I will never just, if someone comes to me and goes, Claire, can you tell me what supplement to take? I'm like, no, I need to know your health history. I need to know what medication you're on, because I want to be safe.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this properly. I'm a nurse by background,
Yeah.
If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it properly.
What are your thoughts on then celebrities, influencers online influencing people to take supplements because I suppose they're getting paid to promote them? What are your thoughts on that? Because I come across so many supplements that people that I follow and probably am influenced by them, that this is going to make my nails grow stronger, or this is going to make my hair grow longer, or I'm going to be able to run a marathon if I take this, and stuff like that. Should we be listening to that? I'm guessing the answer is going to be no.
Yeah, I mean, maybe some people might think I'm too cautious. So like, oh, what does it matter? But there are some, sometimes we can actually take too much, and that can become toxic to the body as well.
I was going to ask this. What are the disadvantages, or what happens if you do, over?
It is quite possible that you can
Over-supplement.
take too much supplement. So that's why I really like to see, well, where are you currently at? What is currently going on? How are you absorbing? So I find it a really interesting market. I'm getting all the adverts for all the supplements, and the celebrities are saying they feel better, and they may well do, because they may well have been deficient to start with. But I think what that creates this culture of is that, well, if I don't feel well, I will just take a supplement. And are we still just doing if I don't feel well, I'll go to the GP and get medication? Actually, can we start normalizing looking after ourselves, nourishing our bodies with food? And yes, there is the caveat that we're not getting all our nutrients from food like we used to. We can go down the road of soil quality, export of food, how nutrients are sort of lost in that process. But can we start with food first?
Yeah.
And if you are deficient, then kind of add them in.
Yeah.
Because it's a really tricky one, isn't it? Because I'm probably fairly influenced by social media, I think, like a lot of people.
Yeah, we
and
are, yeah.
Probably some people don't want to admit that.
Yeah.
But I do take supplements I from maybe stuff that I've listened to in podcasts and social media, and I think, it makes a lot of sense. So I think I take vitamin D and K12 or B12? B12 as well.
K2.
K2, that's it, sorry. Don't even know what I take. And magnesium sort of every now and then. But like you say, it's luck of the draw. because you don't know if you're deficient in them. You don't even know if you need them. So some of the people that might take them, let's say 50% of people that do get better, 50% is a complete waste of time and a complete waste of money. So I suppose the massive advantages of what you do is it's not just rolling the dice. It's not just luck of the draw. You know, you are investing a lot more to start off with to see if you can actually find out what the obviously find the symptoms, find where the problem comes from, and then actually supplement correctly rather than just trying lots of different bits and bobs, potentially wasting money on something which you're probably feeling better because it's more so like placebo in the short term.
Yeah. You feel like you've empowered yourself, you've taken control, and that can help you feel better at times.
Yeah. And I think also I feel like we're putting a lot of blame on social media here, but with social media, I think there's like stereotypes of people that are healthy and fit and they have really good nutrition and they put all these things on social media. And once you've then, you know, had a green juice or you've taken a few supplements, you also feel like, I'm healthy now because I've done that. I've done exactly what they're doing. But like Jevon said, there's so much advantage in actually knowing the specifics of you and your body. And that's the only way that you're actually going to be able to feel that.
Yeah.
Like I said, just learning so much here.
How do you feel about, you've obviously spent a lot of time in the NHS, but how do you feel about the way sort of the NHS goes around sort of diagnosing these kind of problems? Because I think we mentioned it right at the start. It might have even been a conversation we had before we even started recording, but it seems like the NHS at the moment, you go to a GP, it's very much reactive rather than actually proactive. And it seems to me, my opinion on it is, maybe that's the way it's been set up, but I also think people now want a quick solution and feel like, you know, if they're getting a drug or if they're getting some sort of pharmacy, that'll make more of an impact than actually sort of finding what the problem is, and then having more of a holistic approach to it with nutrition, exercise, you know, lifestyle habits, that sort of thing. Whereas they can just take a drug and it'll be, I'll start to get better tomorrow.
Yeah. It's a really interesting question because I don't want to demonize medications either, because there are situations where medications is needed. I do feel that the pressure it's a really hard one for me to answer, because when you're in the NHS and you're in there, you sort of don't see it from, like, I now see it from a different place.
Right.
And so now I'm on the other side where I have more time to spend with my clients. But the NHS is under so much pressure to deliver. There's constant targets depending on what government is in. You know, KPIs. We've got these targets. They've got to be reached. And everyone is just trying their best. But the problem is there isn't the time and there isn't the resources. And also, we need a cultural shift. We've had the NHS for what? I should know when it started. It was
after the Second World War.
Second World, something like that. Yeah. We've had the NHS for a long time. And so we're very much used to it being there, and we haven't had the culture shift. And this is what we see, I think, more in America, where you have to pay for your healthcare. And I don't agree with that either, but I do see that we're starting to go more and more private. Like, for example, I had a letter last week from my dentist saying, look, we can't afford to do NHS anymore. So now we're going private. So either I have to pay private or go and find an NHS dentist, which you won't find. You know, and so I think we need a culture shift. Instead of thinking, I need a quick fix, actually it's worth the time and investment to look after myself so that I don't need the medication.
I think we do need a culture shift, but I don't know how that's going to come about for a couple of reasons. The pharmaceutical companies will stop making money from it. Yeah,
and that's a huge problem.
When there's such a huge part of that. And also, like you said, the mindset around the NHS, it's clearly not working at the moment, is it? As well as it could do. You know, it's huge, it's on its knees.
Yeah.
And people are looking for quick fixes.
Yeah.
And when there's elections going on and people are looking for answers, people want quick fixes. And the bigger culture shift that we have to sort of move towards is like, it's not going to happen within a 4-year sort of election period, is it?
not
it's a 20-year sort of plan. So politically and culturally, nobody's going to ever allow that to happen because everybody's just focused on trying to get elected.
I think behind the scenes, there'll be more and more and more privatization. Yeah. I mean, it's already happening. I used to work for a private providing NHS services.
Right.
So it's happening.
Yeah.
But it will become more and more like, as I said with my dentist,
Yeah.
where we start to see services are dropped. We can't offer that anymore. You have to go private. I've known people who've paid privately for operations because they can't wait
Oh,
for
yeah.
how
I
long
know
it's
loads
going
of
to
people
take.
with that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, thankfully they had the money to do it. Not everybody's in that position.
Yeah.
And that's where, you know, I think with what I do, I'm very aware it's a private service and it's not accessible to all. And goodness me, do I wish it was. But it is, you know, it is trying to find that balance between what people need and
Yeah.
I
running
think
a business.
there is an argument with the NHS though, because I agree obviously that there isn't enough resources and they're overstretched and everything, but they also do have significant responsibility because people fully trust and believe whatever they say. Like I know people that will have a symptom, they'll Google it, whether you should do that or not, and
Mr. Google.
whatever the NHS website says, that's exactly what they will do. And like for example, I just Googled today how to improve fatigue, and the first website that came up was the NHS website, and there was 7 steps to fight it.
Yeah.
And now we've been having this conversation, I'm actually quite shocked how it just doesn't go into any depth on this website. I know it's difficult too as well, but the first one, eat often to beat tiredness. Like that, and then that's all they say about it. Just,
Wow.
just eat often, get moving, lose weight.
I mean,
like it's
That's an easy one.
it's crazy. I can't actually believe it, especially after the conversation we've just had. Sleep well.
I mean, sleep is important. Don't get me wrong.
That is true.
The lose weight, I actually get quite. If you want to see me get on a soapbox,
Get on it, Claire.
I would love to.
So why is that not? Why?
this notion of eat less, move more. I think because of my client group and chronic illness, it can actually be quite harmful. Okay, in its simplicity, some of us probably do need to eat less, and we probably do need to move more. But what it creates is this additional pressure. You must lose weight. The thing is, there is a whole vast range of different body types and shapes. And it could be that you're not losing weight for 101 different reasons. What's your stress system doing? What's your blood sugars doing? Is your liver working? And your gut working as effectively as they could be? Sometimes by creating balance, people then lose weight. But what tends to happen is people go lose weight. So they go on a really calorie deficient diet, which actually can send the body into starvation mode, which will drop your metabolism, which means you just end up constantly working against yourself. Then you go and move more. Well, you might end up trying to run a marathon, stressing your body out because you're doing far too much exercise. You're on the cardio machine, and actually what your body needs is an hour of Pilates or stretching or a gentle walk. That can be just as effective as trying to run, you know, a 5K at the gym or do weights at the gym. I mean, strength training is beneficial, don't get me wrong, because it builds up your muscle. Your muscle also is one of the, you know, primary glucose users as well as your brain. But it just creates this. And then what I find is people end up calorie deficient diets, eating rubbish food because it says it's 99 calories. And they'll say, I can't have avocados and nuts. I'm like, why can you not have avocados and nuts? Or because they're too high in calories. And I'm like, yeah, but can we focus on quality and nutrition and the nutrients that are in food, not it's 99 calories?
It's huge, isn't it? Because
I'll go off on one.
I love this. I'm so like for this as well. There's so many factors that go into it. And like all these influencers that jump on social media and say, oh, it's as simple as calories in, calories out. And I thought that was the case, but like the more I looked into it, I listened to a few podcasts, I read a few sort of short books on these things. So I don't profess to be like fully like, you know, up to speed with it all, but I think it's fairly obvious. You know, you eat 100 calories of something really bad for you, sugary, blah, 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 opposed to like say an avocado, 100 calories. I think we all know which one's going to make the difference. And like somebody on a podcast said, it was really interesting, you know, calories is like quite a strange way to measure these sort of things, but the only way that we've got at the moment, because, you know, there's say 100 calories in that piece of wood there. But if you eat it, it's not going to do any good for you, is it? But we've simplified it so much for social media, for like the clickbait and to make it easier for everybody across the board, that I think people have just got a bit confused with that, haven't they?
And it's understandable. Like, I have to, there are times where I'll watch stuff or listen to podcasts that I have to take a step back and go, right, what's true, what's logical, what's sensible about this. But I've also I did a 3-year course in this. You know, I've spent a lot of time researching and learning and developing. So
And the thing is, it changes so much all the time as well, doesn't it? That's what's so flipping hard about it all. It's great.
But I think if we can keep to the simple of just that balanced plate that I talked about, for a lot of my clients, if that is probably the biggest change. If they put in the balanced plate and the balanced eating, they feel so much better quite quickly.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, that's the first thing I'm trying to be clear.
It's the most simple thing to do. And it's like, if we can just simplify, you know, aiming for your balanced plate, you know, they say 30 plants, that's like herbs, spices, veggies, nuts, grains, a week, 30 different ones a week. I mean, that might also confuse people. So if we just keep it really simple, you know, it's like how simple, you know, it's like breaking it right down. Just do that.
Yeah, I think people will struggle with that though. I think that is quite difficult. You know, it's 5 a day, that whole thing.
It's not enough.
It's not enough. And I also don't think people get anywhere near that.
No.
I think the people that think they get near that, probably like myself, actually break it down, probably don't. And yeah, I probably don't. That's what's really interesting, isn't it?
It's really interesting. But that's where, like I say, if half your plate is full of non-starchy veg, wherever possible, because I think we can go down the road of, I'll have peas and carrots. And you're like, no, we need more than just peas and carrots and sweet corn. It needs to be a wider variety wherever possible. And people then go, well, what about the cost? Frozen veg. It's so frozen good, on site, so it's probably got a more likely to hold its nutrients. Sorry. Just put some frozen veg.
I just think it's really interesting because, which is obviously a big impact on your business, but I don't even think about this day to day. Like, I don't even really think about what I eat, to be honest. I put no thought into it apart from the fact, do I fancy it? Yeah, I'll have it. And YOLO, it does have such an impact on everything in your life, like your productivity, but inside and outside of work. Like I said, I'm just baffled over here.
So would maybe not to finish off the nutrition side of things, but would you say this is for people that are deficient and have problems? Your service is more so for people that have problems and have recognized those problems and want to get back to maybe the norm? Or is it also for people that feel okay but want to take it that step further?
So the different packages I offer start from like just a nutrition review. So if you're somebody that's like, I just don't know what to eat, then that's great. Right through to actually you're someone who's really struggling. You want really like actionable, this is what you need to do, this is what you need. So it kind of covers different people.
Covers all of them, even if somebody like myself, I feel like I eat well, I feel like I know a lot about it, I feel like I'm operating pretty well. You can push me to that next level as well. So it's, you know, people that are listening, anyone can use these sort of services and have an actual massive benefit of these sort of things as well.
I'd say so, yeah.
So we touched on exercise, but what are your thoughts about exercise and moving the body to impact?
I think it depends on the individual. I think with a lot of my clients are obviously there's burnout, chronic illness. So full on exercise is actually not good for them, but we all need to move our bodies. We were not designed to be sedentary. We were not designed to sit at our desks all day. And actually that's causing more health problems. We need to move. It's like our body has got lots of muscles. Muscles need to be used to be able to build them up. So depending on where you're at, it could be as simple as actually if you're someone that doesn't exercise at all, or even just saying movement. I think if exercise, the thought of the word exercise is too much for you, just say, I'm going to move my body because that's what my body needs. Go for, start with a 5-minute walk and build up. It's all those little small steps, isn't it? I did this last night. I got off the bus to stop earlier, walked a lot. I mean, I have a canal near me, so it's quite easy.
You wanted to.
Nice. And, it could be, you start with some simple stretching exercise on YouTube or strength exercises right through to kind of, going to the gym, but you've got to make it fun. I think we've got into this idea that the only way to exercise is to go to the gym, lift your weights, run like nuts. Whereas actually there's something beautiful about just sometimes if I'm feeling really like I haven't moved, I'll just get up, put a song on and dance around my office. So if
That's
you see
a
me
nice idea.
looking
that.
silly.
I think it's just all about, goes back to like sustainability of this
Yes.
as well, doesn't it really? And actually not doing it just for a month, but doing it for all of your life.
Yes.
Because you're just going to fall back into the same pit that you were in originally, won't you? I mean, if you did 2 press-ups a day, every day for a week, you've done 14 press-ups.
Yeah.
That's a lot better than doing 1 day of 20 press-ups.
Yeah.
Isn't it? That's what's going to be
Definitely.
able to get you there slowly, because it's a compounding sort of interest.
Well, it's your
of this
habit
sort of stuff
stacking,
over time,
isn't it?
Yeah.
What sort of advice would you give to people that have never really done any exercise throughout their life and are maybe slightly older and have got to the point where they do need to start moving their body, but they haven't done it before and they have never had that in their life?
I feel like loads of people will be in that situation that maybe haven't been from the generation
Yeah.
where exercise has been so important over the last sort of 10, 15 years. They don't know the importance of diet. They don't know the importance of moving their body. How would you get somebody started?
It is literally as simple as starting small. So I work with a personal trainer who is in North Devon, and she works with individuals with chronic illness. And her top tip is always, sometimes you start with putting your shoes on and getting outside the door, and then perhaps just going for a walk. Well, maybe not around your house, depends. I can't walk around my house, but perhaps you go to a post box and back, and that's it. And then the next day you might go, I'll go to the post box and maybe walk to the next lamp post and come back. The thing is, it's just getting started. And if you feel like it all feels too overwhelming, then that's where I'd always recommend proper, like, go and get personal support from a professional.
Yeah,
and that doesn't have to be a personal trainer, but it could be a plan. Because as long as it fits into your lifestyle, like you said, getting off that bus, that stop earlier, that's something which you can fit into your lifestyle, and it just makes it so much more sustainable rather than having to make yourself do something completely out of your routine every single day.
And just make it fun.
Make it fun. What's the ideal amount of exercise? So say if I've got the privilege of growing up in the last 20 years and I do know the importance of exercise, and I'm a fairly able-bodied person, I did a lot of sport when I was younger. What should I try and work towards if I'm able to?
That's a good question. I'm not sure, to be fair. There's the government guidelines. I think it's 150 minutes a week. I think it's not really my area of expertise when it comes to how much exercise we should be doing. But I think, so it's not one I can really...
Is more better, do you think? Or
No, more always... Depends what you're doing, though. Like, in terms of more, if you're like stressing your body out, then no. But if you are like walking and you're enjoying the walking and you feel you can manage the walking, keep going. But it's trying not to put too much pressure on this on it.
I think it's difficult because societal changes has such an impact on this. I think, so like we just said, there are older generations that have grown up and don't understand the importance of exercise, movement, have never done it. But then I'd also say our generation is the complete opposite, and they feel like they have to do exercise. And like, I know people, probably myself included, if I don't move my body every day, if not six times a week out of 7, I feel really guilty. I feel like
I'll go mad.
Again, like I feel like I have to release some sort of, is it serotonin?
Stress.
I have to release something by doing exercise.
Oh, I see. Yes.
What's
serotonin.
Serotonin. So I think it's like massively societal as well, that because we've been brought up with doing a club every night, that's just, if I don't do that in my day, then I haven't had a good day.
So I guess the question I have to you is, do you enjoy it?
I do, yeah.
Okay, well, that's fine then.
Is that okay?
That's okay.
Yeah.
If you're enjoying it, crack on.
Yeah.
It's when you're forcing yourself to do it. I mean, okay, there are sometimes times where you won't feel like it, and actually you go and do it and you feel much better after. We know that you get the endorphin release. You felt like, oh yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
I've had moments where I've been sat on the sofa and I'm like, oh, and then I go out for a walk and I'm like, oh, I feel much better.
And it's a game changer, yeah.
It's a game changer. But I think if you are getting to the point where, and I have to watch this with, like, I have to check in with my body. Like, sometimes it's am I exercising because that's what I should be doing? Or is it because I want to do it?
Right.
And if we're in that I want to do it,
then it's always good.
yeah.
There is a balance there.
There is, again,
it's all back to balance.
It's all back to balance.
I think sometimes, maybe just to finish on the exercise point, I think a lot of people fall into the trap of doing lots of exercise and not like providing your body with enough nutrients. You know, if they say, right, I'm going to try and lose weight, or I'm going to be more healthy and fitter. Like if you go down the eating a lot better or a lot less, and then doing loads and loads of exercise, doing those two things at the same time usually aren't the right thing to do for your body, aren't they? So it's almost like do one and then support the other.
And starting with nutrition, actually, you can't, can't outrun a bad diet, or can't out-exercise a bad diet.
Yeah.
Start there.
Which I try to do every week.
And also we've got to remember that fitness trackers aren't that accurate, with data starting to come through where they overestimate how many calories you've burnt. So you're like, oh, I've just done 500 calories on two piece cake. I'm like, I need to rethink that.
And isn't it, just lastly, I don't know whether it is about losing weight if that's the end goal, but don't they say that it's actually 80% nutrition and 20% the actual movement that you do?
I have heard of that.
Something like that.
And actually it's about what, why do you want to lose weight? I think is the important question. A lot of clients come to me and weight loss will be their first goal. And I try not to have that as the first goal. And we dig really deep into, but what is it that you want? And often it's, I want to be able to run around after the kids. I want to feel better in myself. I want to feel more confident. I'm like, a lot of this isn't about weight, it's about how you feel. And actually, sometimes by changing what they're eating or putting the supplements in or changing the lifestyle elements, they feel better. And then they're like, actually, it's not the weight.
I think some people, spot on, will think they're overweight and they'll think the way they feel is normal.
Yes.
And they won't have ever felt a lot better to what is actually normal.
Yeah.
That's quite a big part of it as well.
It's a massive part of it. And I think a lot of like issues, like gut health, for example, bloating, feeling uncomfortable in your body isn't often a weight thing. It's a gut thing. So can we sort that out? And often we sort that out and the body will lose weight.
Yeah.
So
it's all linked.
It's all linked. But I think we've got the wrong focus. We've got let's lose weight. And, there are 101 different ways to do it quickly. But then you just put it back on.
Yeah, straight back.
Let's just really change the focus on, I'm going to nourish my body, give it what it needs. And actually, I'll probably lose weight as a consequence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us about the Female Health Founders, Devon, Claire.
Yeah. So Bridie runs Female Health Founders, and this is a global network for female health founders. It's really around women's health entrepreneurship, and it's about supporting you as a female health founder to run your business. So it's not just about networking, it's about masterclasses, community, collaboration. So it's like people, you've got all scales. You've got people like marketers and AI specialists right through to people like me. So Bridie runs that, and that's a global community, but she has a vision for regionals, not centres, regional areas.
Yeah.
That's it. And I am the one for Devon.
Wow.
So we launched that a couple of weeks ago. And so at the moment, it's just raising awareness, and it's all about, basically, we want to reduce the gender health gap. And this is something, especially with my background in nursing and my health journey, that I feel that as women, we don't get heard when it comes to our health.
You say the gender health gap?
Yes.
I've not heard of that.
Okay. So a lot within the medical model is geared towards men. A lot of the research, it is starting to shift, but a lot of it is geared towards...
Why is that?
Because that's where the research was done. And so that's just and also if you think about women's rights, a lot of the time we were told hysteria, it's in our heads. We're made very differently to men, if we just look at simple biology, but it's been very focused on, the research has been on men, and it is starting to shift, but we're still miles behind where we need to be. And so the aim is that by empowering female health founders to be a bigger voice, to showcase what we do, to get in front of the policymakers, we can start to reduce that gender health gap.
Where are the gaps? Are there any sort of areas in particular?
Well, it's the medical gap, because if you think about a lot of women's, hormone conditions like menopause, has been massively highlighted over recent years, but actually the type of treatment that you can find is very sparse in somewhere like Devon. We're still limited to what we can access. Things like hormone conditions like endometriosis, even myself with the fertility stuff, I've been told that from the NHS, I have to have, the recommendation is 3 miscarriages before you're given support, hormone support. So we've had to go private because I'm like, I don't really want another one. Mm-hmm. So we've had 2. And so it's little things like that. Whereas if it was a man, it wouldn't be in the same position. And so I think I was talking to someone last week who told me they've been medically gaslit. They've got all these symptoms and they've gone to the doctor. It hasn't fit their criteria of what they expect. So they've been told it's in their head. And this is what I hear a lot of from women. We're told it's in our head. It's not real. We're making it up. And they're like, let's go and get psychological support.
Do you think that's down to lack of education? Yeah.
Lack of education, lack of research, lack of understanding over the female body and the differences. Even just, throughout the month, we have differences in our energy levels, in our motivation, in how we turn up. And it is starting to be talked about, but it's not quite getting through. And I don't want to tar the medical, everyone in the medical field, because there are people who are learning more, doing more. But as a generalization,
how do we change that?
Well, that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
It's a massive culture shift, isn't it? But it's raising the profile. It's saying we refuse
awareness for now
to be hidden.
I don't think it necessarily needs to just be in the medical profession. Like in every profession, everybody should know about everybody's biology, hormones, like even in the workplace, there's 3 girls in this office, for example, and we all go through different things at different times of the month. And that maybe there's some people in here that maybe don't even know about that.
Yeah.
Like I know there's men in my life that probably don't even know what happens in the menopause, which is just crazy. It's just crazy.
Or probably just through the month generally.
Or even through the month. Yeah. And that is definitely something that needs to be brought to people's attention.
Yeah.
Outside of just in the medical profession, I think.
How do we do that?
Well, it comes down to education. So whilst obviously what we're doing is about empowering people, it's not just about females. It's about the wider community of how do we educate people about this stuff.
I think it's also open conversations, isn't it? Like just talking to people.
Just talking to people, yeah.
Even like, I don't even know why I feel embarrassed saying this, but even when a girl is on their period, why can't we just say, I'm on my period?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm maybe a bit sad today.
There's the stigma though, isn't there?
Yeah.
Of like, she's being hormonal. I'm like, men also have hormones. Can we just point this one out?
Yes. Yeah.
Our hormones are, hormone balance is different.
Yeah.
But we all have hormones. Insulin's a hormone. Cortisol's a hormone.
Yeah.
Let's just normalize that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it all just needs to be normalized, doesn't it?
How do we normalize it though?
Talk about it.
Yeah. I think
Where do we start talking about it? How do we start talking about it?
We're doing it just now.
Just now.
We're the change that needs to happen.
I think there is more and more. It's hard for me to know how much is changing because of the people that I'm around.
Yeah.
And I'm not in the workplace like I used to be. So I don't know how it is.
Is it something that should be taught in schools?
Yes. All this
is
stuff
it not taught in schools?
Do you know what? I don't know whether this is something that still happens, but I remember in year 6, all of the girls got taken to a different classroom to be speaking about periods, which do you think that still happens?
I can't say.
No, I don't know
I
either.
have no idea. I'd like to hope not. Because I think, so it's really interesting.
But they're not separated, sorry.
I don't know if they're not separated anymore. Yeah. But what I think needs to happen is the normalization around. I remember talking to my niece and nephew about this, and just to my nephew, because he was like, it's not going to happen to me. And I was like, hang on a second. You might have a partner, who's female, or, your sister. And it's all about the
You're
snacks.
going to be affected.
Yeah.
by
And that's
it,
about
that's
the,
for
it's
sure.
about the love. Like me and my husband have these, I'm like, it's snack day.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, okay. Go and get the snacks, shall I? And I'm like, yeah, I need the snacks.
Yeah.
And we've just normalized it to be like, okay, do you know what? This is why I'm like this today. It could possibly be because it's that time of the month. And it's
Yeah.
trying not to be like, oh, I'm being hormonal, but actually just
Yeah.
being honest.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think honest conversations, like day to day, are the way. And even just like not feeling afraid to
Yeah.
talk about it. I think I feel maybe a little bit scared to talk
course.
about it.
Of
which
course.
And that's a cultural thing,
It's
isn't
a
it?
cultural
thing.
We're not demonized it, but it is quite taboo, isn't it?
It's
Like you
taboo.
say, the norm was everybody split up in the classroom to talk about these things because
Yeah.
these affect you and this
Yes.
affects you. But
Yeah.
I suppose the earlier we can talk about it, everybody putting everybody together. So it is just a very normal thing.
It's just
'Cause it is
something
a
that
normal thing.
happens.
Yeah.
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 We go through these changes. Let's just crack on and
So what are you going to do in Devon then? What are your plans? Have you got?
yeah, so the plans at the moment is to grow the membership community with the aim of starting face-to-face events later in the year,
Yeah.
so that you've got that mix of kind of support locally and getting in front of kind of partners locally as well as having the global community.
So with your networking events,
Yeah.
is it just targeted to females to attend? Because after this conversation, I feel like it shouldn't be.
No, it is open to men as well. I think it probably will be more, but
Women.
it's anybody that's involved with female health.
Right. Okay.
So if you are a man involved with female health,
Yeah.
grand,
Yeah.
I
I think maybe you should do like separate events for to start educating people, like in the workplace or within
Yeah.
businesses or something like that. That isn't just, just for female health
I see.
organisations.
That's a good idea.
Educational
Education,
talks,
yeah,
that
yeah.
sort of thing. Or even networking events. That's probably something you do anyway, but like I think people will think that it's just for women, but it's actually more for men.
Yeah.
Because the women know about this stuff, don't they?
Yeah.
But the men,
Well,
that's a stereotype.
That's
as well,
a stereotype because I think, a lot of people don't understand their bodies.
Yeah.
I've had to
Yeah.
learn to understand my body because of the health journey I've been on. I've had various things from chronic illness to infertility, which has meant that I've really had to learn what does my body need. But most of us don't know that. So it doesn't matter if you're male, female, non-binary, whatever you identify as. I think we all just need to learn to understand what our bodies need.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, we've just come up with a new networking event.
Love it.
Let's move on to how this all came about for you, because it
Yeah.
has been a bit of a journey, isn't it, really?
Just
And
a
you come
bit.
from a background which obviously influences what you do,
Yeah.
pretty greatly. Talk to us about your journey.
Sure.
Do we start in the NHS?
Yes, we do start in the
Yeah.
NHS. So I was a paediatric intensive care nurse. That was my aim, to be an advanced nurse practitioner. It was, I think, I can't fully remember the time. It's probably 2009, 2010, but swine flu. So
I remember that.
Yeah, I
a
remember
sister
that.
of COVID. And I got swine flu, they think, but of course I was vaccinated, so they couldn't test because it was, it was already there. And then I ended up in this cyclic. Before that, I should probably point out, I'd had glandular fever, I'd had digestive issues. So it's sort of like, but I'd gotten through those without much. I'd given up gluten by that point, but thought that was an on and off process. So by the time I got to the point of probably contracting swine flu, I was probably more depleted than I realised. And Epstein-Barr virus, which is the glandular fever, likes to hide away and pop up. It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Oh,
I'm
right.
like,
How
thank you.
kind.
Never
How
goes.
kind. But anyway, so I got swine flu, and then I ended up on this cyclic, like 18 months of constantly going back to the GP. I'd be okay, then I wouldn't. I'd be okay, then I wouldn't. To the point where I was on sickness policy. You've been off too much. And then I moved house. So I was living in Edinburgh at the time. I moved house, went to a new GP because I kind of collapsed after moving, because it was an incredibly stressful event, lots going on. And they took one look at my history and went, I think you've got chronic fatigue syndrome. And I was like, oh, okay. And it wasn't something that I'd really come across. A lot of
So
what I knew.
what is it? What is it? Because I think people do hear about it, but maybe don't know what it is.
Yeah. So in its simplest term, it is a label. It's like, we don't quite know what's wrong with you. So it's a label term. But it is fatigue that doesn't go away with sleep. So if you've ever had flu and you feel that brain fog, heaviness, walking through treacle, it's like that most of the time.
How does that come about?
Well, that's the challenge with chronic fatigue syndrome and a lot of these chronic illnesses is that there's underlying factors and it's not just one thing that happens. So I can go, okay, I know my journey, so I can share my journey of, I believe I had a dysregulated stress system. There was some childhood trauma in my life. Then I had glandular fever. So then I had digestive issues. So I was depleted. And it was like a tipping point. So I got swine flu and my body just went, I cannot cope anymore.
Oh, so it's not one thing that brings it on. It's an accumulation
It's an
of things
accumulation,
which wears
yeah.
away at you at a time. Okay.
And you just, you know, your body wears down, and then goes. So at this point I collapsed. It was around December 2011 and got this, we think it's chronic fatigue syndrome, and I ended up in infectious diseases because they had nowhere else to take me to send me basically. Got all the bloods taken under the sun because that's the only way to diagnose. There's not like a test. It's we test for everything else. And if it's all negative, you have chronic fatigue syndrome.
Okay.
It's pretty much how they go down the line of it. I've learned a huge amount.
It's almost like a name for the symptom.
Yeah, pretty much. We don't know what to do with you.
Yeah.
So I was off work. I ended up having 6 months off work, but in this period, I went to see a GP and I remember this clearly. And I found my journal the other day and I'd written down what this GP had said. They went, your career, is over. You won't go back to PICU. You just need to read a book on stress and anxiety and take some antidepressants. Crack on.
Buzzing.
Wow.
I mean, they didn't say the crack on part. I just say that.
Yeah. Added effect.
Might as well.
Added effect. And that was sort of, I don't remember. I think there wasn't a lot at that point. Things have changed, but it's still very far and few between.
How can a GP say something like that? It's absolutely. Was that basically what everybody thought at the time?
I don't know if it's what everybody thought. I did meet some incredible GPs who were much nicer than that and actually did try and help me. And I'd go with like, I think it could be this. And they were like, no, it's not. And they would help me, like they would research and help me out. But the problem was nobody knows what to do with it. It's like this anomaly of so many different things that could be going on.
Is it a disease for life?
That's what they say. They say you will never recover.
Okay.
I have recovered, and I will say I have recovered.
Yeah.
So where did you go from there when?
So there was a period of like massive grief and like, what does this mean? And also I'm a bit stubborn and was like, nah, it's not going to happen, blah, blah, blah. I actually couldn't stay at PICU, so that did happen. But in the midst of all of this, so I'm a Christian and I believe in healing. I also know that for some people it's not instant. And there's a waiting, like there's times of waiting, or it's not going to look how you think. And in this time, somebody gave me a book. It was a Christian book that was on nutrition, mindset, and lifestyle practices. And I started putting them into practice. And bit by bit, I started to see improvements. Not massive improvements, but enough that I was like, actually, what we eat, what we think, how we're looking after ourselves really does make a difference.
What were the first sort of things you started doing?
At that point, I think I was back on gluten at that point because I remember switching to wholemeal flour. Like I took sugar out of my diet. I actually stopped eating pork because there's this whole thing about pork being really similar to humans.
I've heard that, yeah.
I'm like off that now because
Yeah.
I love pork.
I didn't know that was a fact, actually.
Yeah, I'm like, we just don't think about it.
It's like the most similar meat
Something
in terms
like
of like
that, yeah,
makeup
in terms
to
of
humans,
makeup
isn't
to
it?
human, yeah.
Oh.
And it was just very
love
much,
pork.
I know, like, I try not to. I mean, there'll probably be people who are like, you should not eat it. But anyway, we all have.
Yeah. We're not all perfect.
We're not all perfect. I'm definitely not. So what else? In more fruit, more veg, complex carbs. Yeah, a lot about what I teach. There was some weird and wonderfuls. I remember like having to put iodine in water and then like clean my nose out because like trying to clean bacteria. It was a lot more, reducing the bacterial load. Now, like some of the things I'm like, I wouldn't do that, but there are things I'd recommend to people now that is along the lines of reducing toxins so that the body hasn't got so much to deal with.
Yeah.
But some of it I was like, ooh, obviously sleep, movement, obviously because it was a faith book, prayer, that sort of thing. So
Seems like quite simple stuff, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I think maybe people don't realize it to be that simple sort of stuff until they actually start doing it.
Yeah.
And people think, again, like straight back to like when we're talking about the NHS, people think it needs to, we need to do all these silly, big, dramatic things, like take lots of drugs and spend loads of money on something like this to actually make these changes, where it's actually like the smaller everyday things that we can do, which completely change your body.
Definitely. And I mean, so that was one start. And then I did do other things. Like I did something called the lightning process. I did something called clinical kinesiology. Like it was a constant, like you learn, you do something else, you learn, you do something else. And then 6 years later, after the diagnosis, I could say that I was healed. I really had a sense that I was healed. So
it's funny, isn't it? 'Cause I was just thinking about what you're saying, that it's all simple stuff, but actually to a person in the position that you were in, feeling so fatigued, simple everyday stuff to us that we're able to do every day isn't as simple to people.
But when somebody in your, I agree, in your situation, you were in, there was so much change, like you obviously, there was a lot of hurt and you were in quite a sort of dire need for dramatic change. You would always feel like what you have to do to get out of where you're in has to be and feel really dramatic and big, rather than just smaller baby steps on a consistent long-term basis, like better sleep, better diet, which people just completely throw that out because they think that's not going to be enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then it's also feeling safe in your body. I think we've got to create safety. And so our stress systems, when you're living in, like I was, you're constantly in like fight, or even freeze. And you're not getting into the rest and digest in the same way. So it's learning. I mean, stress, it's not that stress is bad. We do need some stress in our lives, but it's how you create safety, make your body feel safe. And that's where sometimes it is just really going to giving yourself permission to take the small steps. And it might take longer than you think. I feel that's the same with business, isn't it? Sometimes these things take longer than you think. But if you keep consistent, then actually with time
things change.
And that's partly why I've developed the program, my kind of signature program, because I went through so many different things and I learned so much that I've tried to bring it all together. Because the thing with chronic fatigue, I mean, that's just one chronic illness, there's many different chronic illnesses, is that it's not everyone has the same reasons how they got there. It's not the same body processes that is going on that I would have had. So that's where I bring the testing in. That's where I bring the coaching in, so that we can get really clear on actually where are you at.
So specific rather than
it's
a generic a tablet across the board sort of thing, which is what social media is peddling out at the moment, isn't it? If you're really serious about finding out what's wrong, you've got to do some pretty serious stuff to get in there, find out what it is, and then actually supplement accordingly or change these things accordingly.
I mean, I've done all sorts. The amount of tests I've done, like seriously.
Yeah, definitely. Well, tell us about these, is it 5 steps you wanted to call it?
Oh, the five pillars.
Pillars.
The 5 pillars that I sort of take people through is nutrition being kind of probably the big one, movement, as we've already discussed, reducing stress. So a lot of that is internal and external stress. So we've also got to consider things like inflammation that's going on in the body, especially when you live with a chronic illness or burnout. The body's fighting itself. So how do we calm that down? So that links into nutrition, links into reducing stress, links into sleep, movement, connections. Loneliness is now starting to be seen as bad as smoking. I think it's 15 cigarettes a day, if I remember correctly.
Wow.
So there's all these elements that I start to, so when I ask questions of my clients, it's like, it's not just what's going on in your body, but what's going on in your life.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about this, it's about everything. It's the holistic model.
Yeah.
And then have I missed one? I think I've missed one. Stress, sleep, hydration, nutrition.
And connections.
No, connections not one, but I forgot.
Oh, chuck connections in there. I think connections is a huge one.
Well, that comes under the reduced stress.
It does, yeah.
We put the connections in there. Obviously, I can't advise people to go and make friends, but it is, what's your relationships doing? Do you have a lot of stress at work, at home? How do we balance? And I have to be careful because I'm not a counsellor.
Yeah.
I am NLP trained, so that's neuro linguistic programming. It's a type of coaching. So I'm trained in that, and I'm trained in coaching. But yeah,
I suppose you make people aware. Don't you?
It's
you
raising
bring
that
things to the
awareness.
surface.
That's the thing, and like you take such a wider holistic approach to all of this, don't you? Rather than just saying, "Here's one supplement, you have this, you're off, you're good." And it sounds like what you said at the start. You want to make yourself redundant. You can put all of these things together, point people in the right kind of direction, and then they can go from there. And like the connections one, like you mentioned, I was just thinking back to like a few documentaries I've watched recently. With the blue zones, the blue zones with the sort of people that live the longest, the people in Sicily and Okinawa, Japan, they all have fairly similar but different diets. But the one thing that they say why they live the longest is because of the community and the connections and the support around them. They all live in sort of bigger families where there's sort of 2, 3, 4 generations. They do sort of very regular, normal movement. They eat a very clean, sort of less processed diet, don't they, like the Mediterranean diet? But the big thing, the one that makes a huge difference, is the connections, because they live in fairly small communities and fairly isolated communities where everybody relies on everybody knows each other, big families, that sort of thing, which is something which like the Western world has just gone completely away from, hasn't it, really, in terms of diet, community?
I guess it depends. Like, I am part of a church, so that's probably a big community aspect there. And I guess you find community in different ways, sports clubs, but maybe not in the same way as these kind of blue zone communities that are looking out for each other.
What would you say to somebody that is struggling to make connections or is struggling with the connections in their life?
I guess it's unpicking what is the challenge there. Is it that you're struggling to meet people? Is it that you're struggling to talk to people? I think sometimes we've got to figure out what is it. Is it that you're too tired to, a lot of us are getting home at the end of the day and we're like, I just don't want to talk to people. And you're just collapsing. And I think, again, it comes back to what is it that you are looking for from that connection? Is it support? Is it encouragement? And then it's like taking the small steps. Because it is hard. I think the older we get, the harder it is to make friends.
Huge,
I find that. Like, I used to live in, I lived in Edinburgh, had massive like friendship groups, and then I've moved to a really rural village, and I'm like, oh, it's a bit
no
more.
One here.
It's no one here. It's a bit more challenging. But then I guess it's like trying to make it small, going, what do you enjoy doing? Are you someone that likes to go for walking? And I think things like Eventbrite, or there is an app, and it's gone out my head, Meetup, where you can use things like that and go, okay, there's walking groups. Can I ring the organizer and say, look, this is my first time. Can you look out for me and give me and then you've got accountability that you're going to go. And you could say to the organizer, look, it's my first time. I'm not sure how much I can manage. If I leave after an hour, you know why. You're sort of allowing yourself to get out.
They're quite easy to find now as well, aren't they? With like social media, all you have to do is go on Facebook and chuck in walking group or something like that, for example. But yeah, definitely the older you get, the harder it is, because maybe you distance yourself for that longer period of time, and the longer you're out of it. But I think it all depends on what you want to get out of it. And there's a huge difference between connections and actually meaningful, lasting connections, isn't there? Because
it takes time.
We're in recruitment, we make loads of connections every day, loads of relationships, but they're not meaningful relationships or connections. So it's that is the difficulty, finding meaningful relationships. And I think maybe my best advice, thinking about it now, is it's more about community support rather than maybe clubs. Because clubs are quite
true,
come and go, aren't they? They're sort of friends gathered around sort of a common goal or a common thing that you want to do, say running. But community is actually more about working with each other to better each other, isn't it? Like a church or like a village community, that sort of thing.
Yeah, we have a very active village community, actually. There's lots going on.
That's good.
It's hard to find though as well, isn't it? That sort of thing.
Yeah.
Very difficult. Okay, so we went through the 5 steps. That's all good. How do you find sort of running a business while living with a chronic illness? You say you feel like you are, do I say cured? Is that the right, is that the right word?
I would say I'm recovered.
Okay, that's the right word.
Yeah.
Do you still have those sort of symptoms? And
yeah, so interestingly, I had a miscarriage and COVID just before Christmas, like within a space of 3 weeks. Went through an incredibly stressful time and I went backwards. And it woke me up a lot because I'd gotten to a place of actually I was doing a lot. I was like, woo, look at me. And then I sort of broke and went, oh, crumbs, I've broken myself.
Yeah.
And so that's woken me up a lot because actually I have had periods of fatigue, a lot more fatigue this year. And so I've really had to go back to basics and go, what is it that I need? What is my body trying to tell me? And this is where the non-negotiables have come about. Like, what is it that keeps me grounded to ensure that I'm turning up the best that I can for my clients and for myself and for my friends and for my family? And so my non-negotiables for me are mostly centered around my morning routine. Because if I get up and my phone, I actually leave my phone downstairs. But if I pick up my phone
it's hard
straight
to do,
away,
isn't it?
I've gotten used to it now because I've been doing it for so long.
Yeah.
I have an alarm clock that's over the other side of my room, so I have to get up.
Wow.
And then most of this has come from years of listening to Mel Robbins, I think.
Yeah.
So,
I think a lot of people know this, but then there's actually knowing it and how good it is for you. And then there's actually doing
It's
it,
the
isn't it? It's
doing.
the doing.
but I'm like, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And obviously you just pick one thing at a time.
Yeah.
Don't try and do it all at once.
Yeah.
I have built up. I have built up to this point. So it's easy for me to put in. So, yeah, but if I grab my phone straight away and sit down, that's it. I've got those Facebook algorithms that are like keeping me stuck. I'm like, yeah. So I know that as soon as I get up, I need to go and I usually feed the pets. So I've got a cat and chickens, but I go outside. So I know that sunlight, especially in the mornings, 10 to 15 minutes will help you sleep better. So I'm not doing massive exercise. I just go and feed the chickens, sit in the garden, have some quiet time. Just really I take my shoes off and actually put my feet on the ground. So it's a bit of grounding.
Grounding, nice. That's quite big at the
That's
moment.
quite big at the moment. Yeah. So, get I think it's the ions or something.
Yeah.
So I do that. And then I will stretch. I will do my journaling and prayer. And I will eat a protein-rich breakfast. And if I don't do those things, I'm off. Like I literally do feel that I'm off. And then it's other things like when I plan my diary, am I putting rest breaks in? If I know I've got lots of talking, that evening, I just make sure that I'm not doing anything else, and it's constantly just being mindful that I can't do as much as I used to. And just honoring where I'm at and making sure I'm putting things in. Because what I don't want to do, at the end of the day, I'm now self-employed. I'm the only one that runs this business. If I'm ill, then the business, that's it. It's the end of the business.
Yeah.
The business is ill. The clients that kind of I'm working with, they don't get me. They don't get the best of me. So whilst it does feel a bit tedious at times, it's actually the best thing that I can do.
Do you have
for
quite
myself.
a strict routine, would you say, with those sort of things?
Yes, but do I always do it? No.
I was going to say, are you a slave to the routine?
No, like there are some days, but it's interesting. The days that I don't do it, I know I've not done it.
Okay, yeah.
You feel it.
I feel it. And it comes down to, it's not a should. It's actually when I do it, I feel so much better in myself. And also getting out. So I've gotten outside to feed the chickens, but I like going for walks. So I've really stripped back on my exercise. So I do a lot of cold water swimming, but I don't, I try not to do, I haven't been to the gym in months. I do a lot of walking, a lot of stretching, because that's what my body can cope with. And that's okay. I'm still moving, I'm still doing things, but I'm not pushing it. Because the problem is if we push it too much, it becomes like an elastic band that you keep stretching and stretching and stretching. And of course it can, but then it comes to a point where it can't come back. And so you've got to allow your stress system that ability to come back. So yeah.
So would you say to anybody out there to have some non-negotiables in their life to be their best self?
As long as it doesn't stress you out.
Yeah. Yeah.
It could be like start your day with a protein-rich breakfast, not cereal.
Not cereal or a shake.
Well, add other
Not sure
stuff
what I'm
to
going to do
the.
there.
I know. I'm
I'll
sat
just
here.
give you some ideas what to put in it.
I'm
Yeah.
sat here thinking, I don't think I should eat my lunch today because it's not got the right nutrients in it.
But that's okay, because right now, today, we've had a conversation.
We have.
We now know.
And then, I mean, are you happy to share your lunch and I can add some suggestions?
Yeah, I am. It's a chicken
Yeah.
bagel,
Okay.
bagel thin,
Yeah.
with some sweet chili sauce on it
Okay.
and a packet of Snack Jacks.
Okay.
That's me.
That's you. Okay.
It's not dramatically bad, is it?
It's got no veg or fruit in there.
No veg or fruit, no.
No veg or fruit. There is some protein with the chicken, but I
Yeah.
would be upping that. It is heavier on the carbohydrates.
Yeah.
Fats, we probably could do some more healthy fat.
Yeah.
So there's the good, better and best approach, okay? So a good could be adding an apple, piece of fruit, maybe some yogurt and some fruit, sort of add that in. Okay, better could we swap the bagel thins for perhaps sourdough, like a really good sourdough, put some lettuce in there, take out the Snacker Jacks, maybe have some hummus and crudates, making sure you've got your water. And then best could we go for a salad, chicken salad with perhaps some quinoa, some, green beans, olives. I don't know if you like this stuff, broccoli.
Oh, yeah, sounds great.
Chicken with this, sweet chili sauce is okay, bit of it. Avocado, with, some yogurt and fruit for afters. Do you see what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, it's going, but pick your battles.
Yeah.
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 I like that. Pick your battles, best and better. I think that's quite good, really.
Good, best, better, you say.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
really
Because we
useful.
put so much stress on ourselves of, I've got to, like making our lunches every day. It might not be possible.
No.
You might just be like, you don't have the time, or it's tired, or you I live in the middle of nowhere. So if I haven't planned my week shopping,
You can't go and
I
get
can't go and get it. I have to really think about, okay, we're not too far from a farm shop, but you see what I mean? Like I have to really think about it.
I do think I would, and I'm sure you would as well, love to eat what you've just said every day. But like you say, it's so difficult to do so. It's quite expensive. Preparation time around that. It's tough, isn't it?
But like you say, pick your battles. Good, best, better.
Yeah.
Better, best.
Yeah.
Sorry, other way
And the
around.
expense is an interesting one.
Hmm.
I think it's about context, because a lot of these things, I don't know how much Snacker Jacks are nowadays.
They're actually £1.35 on Club Card price yesterday, Claire.
For how many packets?
5?
So a bag of apples is about the same. I don't actually know off the top of my head. They're about what, one?
Yeah, £2 max for
Yeah.
pink ladies.
Yeah.
Pink late, yeah.
I'm pink lady man.
So sometimes we have to take it out of context and go,
Yeah.
we say it's more expensive to eat this way, but is it?
Mm.
And is it more expensive if in the long run we're iller? So that's the thing we're forgetting, is that it is starting to turn, but generally we live longer than our grandparents, okay? But we're living iller for about the last 15 years of our life. So actually, if we look at cost, then also the cost of, I guess you could say, well, medication, you just pay the prescription fee. But what's the cost of all of that? It's like we have to go wider.
And I also think maybe the perception is that it's more expensive is because we're still getting the Snacker Jacks. We're still still getting the bad
Yeah.
bagels, as well as all these new
Yeah.
foods. So we're adding more food to our diet rather than swapping in the good stuff for the bad stuff.
Or the beneficial,
Yeah.
not so beneficial.
Yeah. Maybe that's not what we're doing.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to, well, what is your priorities? Like I would say, for my husband and I, we spend a huge amount on food, because that for me,
Love it.
I love food. I absolutely adore food. Like we don't go out huge amounts. We don't, I love the theatre, but it's not happening where I live. But you know what I mean? Like, it's like, what is our priorities? So we don't drink a lot. Instead of alcohol, I'd rather spend it on fresh food.
Yeah.
But that's because I have spent years to get to this point. And it is that checking in with yourself and going, what is important to me?
Yeah.
And I think I read a statistic the other day. I can't remember the exact statistic, but in the Western world, we spend the least amount on food when you look at your household budget.
Really?
compared to other countries. And I can't remember the exact statistics, but I was really shocked. And I was like, I was trying to work it out and going, how much of our budget do we actually spend on food? And actually it came out, I was like, oh, actually we do spend quite a lot.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
like
really
we get
interesting, isn't it?
I get an organic veg box because for me, that's important.
Yeah.
And it comes back to what is important to you.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting point, isn't it? It's worth thinking about, definitely. Maybe let's move on to sort of your business, what you're doing at the moment, and sort of how you're sort of trying to grow that. Obviously, we like to talk about your journey and obviously your subject on the podcast, but a lot of it is about growth and sort of where you want to go with it. You're really active on LinkedIn, aren't you? I think you do some great stuff on there.
Thank you.
How do you plan on growing your business? How are you doing that?
Yeah. I probably need... I do really well. I'll like create strategies and then sort of they go out the window. But I have amazingly just been given a grant by Mid Devon Council as a way to grow, because I have a clinic in Tiverton. So they're helping me to grow. So part of that is marketing support. So I'm actually going to get someone to review what I'm doing. I don't like it. I don't like people sometimes reviewing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It comes back to that like, ooh.
Got to be quite vulnerable with that.
It feels quite vulnerable.
Accountable, yeah.
But actually, I am learning. Like this year, like I've worked. Like last year, I worked with a coach, and the importance of KPIs came up a lot. And what I've learned is I don't like KPIs.
Yeah. And
I've really had to unpick why. And the aim is that actually I need to be better at monitoring them. And it's not like I'm failing. It's if I don't meet them, it's I'm learning. And I think as a business owner, I'm really trying to shift my mindset to this is a long game. What is going to take me there, and having a strategy and sticking to it.
It's almost
really important.
Practicing what you preach, isn't it, on the sort of nutritional side of things in the business as well.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
I think it comes down to, as a solo entrepreneur, I don't know what that word is, you have to do everything.
Yeah.
And I think the last few months I've just been focused on, keep well. I've got a vague idea of what I'm doing on social media. But actually I know in order to grow, it needs a proper strategy now. And I need to stick to it.
What's your marketing strategy? What are you doing around that? Because like I say, you are quite active on LinkedIn.
Yeah. So I do, I'm active on Instagram and LinkedIn, and I have like a post schedule. Like I know what I'm posting. I am the person, honestly, that will post on the day. And I know that that is not the way to do it. I know that the ideal is that you group and then schedule, but I never seem to end up doing it. And
why is that the ideal?
Because that's what I'm told is the ideal, because it saves you time.
I don't.
Does it save you time though?
I don't know, because I don't do it.
Yeah.
I think, what you're doing on social media is great, but I think a lot of people forget that marketing isn't just about what you post on social media. It's so much more that goes into it.
Yeah.
And even just from our conversation today, even if you had some of the value that you've spoke to us about and written that up in an article and put it on your website, and then SEO has picked that up, and a lot more people are visiting your website because of the value that and talk about, you're just sharing it in a different way, that is also a big part of your strategy. That's not just posting on social media. So I think that should definitely be brought into what you're going to do in the future. But in terms of posting on the day, I think like Jevon said, if it works for you, then that's exactly what you should keep doing.
Just because
Claire.
somebody's told you it's like the right thing to do to group posts and that sort of thing. That's a pretty blanket statement, isn't it? We were talking about earlier with nutrition and stuff. There's no real right or wrongs with blanket statements, is there? It's also individual. Say it for me.
Individually.
List it.
Perfect.
Got there. So if it's working for you, it's the right thing for you to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
With that sort of stuff.
And I think your business, I don't actually think we said Nourish to Soar. It's what your business is called.
We're about an hour in.
Your business is you.
Yeah.
And what you should be promoting is how you're feeling that day, how the clients that you've helped, and different success stories or different challenges that you found that week. And that's going to be different each day. So you're not going to be able to be your true, most authentic self if you're thinking, on Thursday, I'm going to talk about how I might be feeling this way. Like people people believe in you and your business because of you and who you are, and that's the only way they're going to be able to trust you is you being as authentic as possible. So keep being you.
I think I do think that's a really good point. And you're a solo entrepreneur. The business is you, and I think what you're doing quite well, and great advice from Maddi there, is your personal brand. The business is you. A lot of what your stuff you put out there is you. I think, like Maddi says, definitely do more about how you're feeling and sort of, you clearly practice what you preach. So you're the best case study for it. So the more you can talk about these sort of things, the better. But also your personal brand goes, as far as all the stuff that you do at the networking events, and your, these events that you've got coming up with the women's health and everything. That's a huge part of it as well. I think that's something that you're doing really, really well.
Thank you. I think that's the challenge when you work on your own, is that you don't know how well you're doing, because there is this narrative of what success looks like. And I really have to strip back, but what is it to me?
Yeah.
What is it? And for me, I set this business up because I don't want others to be sat in a GP office being told recovery isn't possible.
Yeah.
I want hope in the midst of illness. And so actually, what does success look like? It's just turning up every day and doing it.
Yeah.
I think even to go further on Maddi's point there, and you do it really well, and you have done today. You've been quite vulnerable and been quite open about a lot of things here, and it's difficult. But the more you can do that on social media, because you are the best case study, I think the better things will go for you.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the way that you should be looking at your marketing strategy, let's say, is exactly the way that you tailor your plan and your clients' plans as well. It's specific to you, it meets your needs, you're able to show up to your best self, and that's the only way that you're going to be able to promote your business in the best light. So I don't think you should listen to what everybody else is telling you that you should be doing.
And you're very real, you keep it very real, and that's what seems to be doing so well at the moment, within business, I think, is on social media. It's really organic, what's the word, unmanufactured content. So it's what a lot of people are talking about on TikTok and social media, isn't it? It's clips raw content where it's literally a video of somebody doing something rather than a full production. Those sort of things have much more sort of organic and better reach for the bigger businesses, opposed to
but is that
a
just
massively
TikTok?
produced no it's all sort of marketing. That's what it seems to be, because I think we've spoken about it loads, and it's something which I'm quite keen on. I really not agree with, but I believe in is relationship, or selling at the moment, or business at the moment is so relationship driven, rather than just transactional and price based. So if you can get people to believe in your story and how it's helped you, and you are your best case study, people will come to you regardless of how much they have to pay for it, because it's all about what you can do for them. They understand your relationship, they understand that it's not a transactional thing that you're working towards. It's more about how can they help you help them with the rest of their life.
Definitely.
And do you know how I think you should do that, Claire? Is I think you should actually just record yourself on your journey, your morning routine, your non-negotiables. Put a camera up outside in your garden and film yourself grounding and feeding the chickens, because everybody would watch that. That's the sort of content that's doing really well. Instead of telling people about what's happened, show them. Yeah.
But that's really difficult, because you have to be quite vulnerable for that, don't you?
Yes. And it depends, I think, where you're at in yourself. I know the days that I'm more tired, that I don't want to post, because you're I don't want to feel more vulnerable. But I also see the value in doing that. But like I say, it's all the other stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, there's the line. There's the line.
It really is.
That was interesting, wasn't it? I do like talking about that sort of stuff. What sort of things have you got in, the pipeline for, a bit of a, I don't know if there's a growth or a sort of marketing plan. Are you sort of executing everything you want to do, or have you got a few more?
I have lots of ideas. I am a big
Give us some of your ideas. What's your best idea? Or your biggest idea?
At the moment, write a book. I'm trying to think of the name, but I've got a book in my head.
Why do you want to write a book?
Because I want to make what I do more accessible, and I recognise that it's not going to be accessible for everyone.
What's inaccessible about what you're doing at the moment?
The price point. you know, so I want people to be able to pick up a book, a bit like what I did. When I started out on this, I picked up a book and that's what got me started.
What would the book be about?
Well, I've got like 6 steps in my head that can help you sort of feel better. And so it's putting those steps into place. It's largely around the 5 pillars that I've mentioned, but there's other things like talking about mindset and habit stacking that I want to bring in. But it's trying to decide if I just do it for individuals with chronic illness or a wider thing. So I don't know. I'm in the brainstorming phase of that, really.
You should do it about your story,
Yeah.
I think, your journey, and then tie in everything alongside that.
Yeah.
Because I think that'd be a...
People will
like
then
that, and it'll be an easier
trust
read
you.
as well.
Yeah.
People will be on your journey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not
So-
to tell you what to do.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. I'll take it on board. So that's one thing.
That's what I think.
I think I just love to teach. It's a real surprise to me. So when I was nursing, I was not a teacher. And I moved into healthcare education about 2017, and it terrified me. Absolutely terrified me. But it turns out I love to talk. And so I just love to teach. So I think I've got a couple of events coming up where, sort of where I'm sharing and teaching. I'd like to run another group program. So I'm in conversations with a personal trainer to do a sort of exercise and nutrition program for those living with chronic illness, because it's, I think, really like helping you to understand what your body needs. So I think that's about it. And also I've got Female Health Founders Devon, which is going to take some time, which is grand. So yeah, there's always 101 things I want to do, but I also have to be sensible and recognize that this is a marathon. This is my favorite phrase. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And actually, I want to be a nutritional therapist. Like, I gave up my nursing registration last year because I was like, this is what I want. I don't want to go backwards. This is my passion. I want to make an impact on people's lives. So what can I do to keep me sustainable? I talk about sustainability for my clients. Actually, I've got to,
That's what you preach.
this has got to be sustainable for me too. So a lot of it I learn as I go along.
What's the goal for the business?
The big goal, the really big ambitious goal, centres across the country for those with chronic illness. So these are centres that bring together not just nutrition, but multidisciplinary team approach, from counselling to financial to occupational health to nutrition, where they can come and feel like, yes. But there's a lot to learn about that yet.
Yeah, well, it's a great goal, because you'll obviously be helping so many people at the same time, wouldn't you? How much are these processes? You know, is it for the rich at the moment? Is it for the wealthy? How what are sort of the payment like? Is it subscription? Is it one-off sort of payments, or?
So depending on the kind of bottom nutrition review is 198. The 8-week program is 597, and then the full 5-month one is 1,800. So it is kind of a more like heavier price point for those that can afford it. But I guess it's recognizing the value of what you get back. You know, if you're somebody that's struggling, you know, perhaps you're struggling, but actually you invest and you feel better and you're able to perhaps work more or do more, then it's the investment is worthwhile.
Oh yeah, definitely. If somebody's serious about this sort of thing, and it's the investment over an extremely long period of time, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you save yourself so much money by mitigating all of these sort of chronic diseases, opposed to,
Yeah.
you know, living a life where you actually can't live.
Yes.
I suppose it's something which is talked about loads at the moment is actually, I don't know how I'm going to say it, but yeah, we're living a long time, but like you said, we're not living and actually doing an awful lot in that time. You want to, what's it called?
I don't know what you're talking about, but a quote to go alongside that I saw the other day is, it's not about the years in your life, it's about the life in your years.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
makes sense.
that's a good point. That's
Yeah.
what
I feel
I
like
was
that's
trying to
trying
get
to what
at.
you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember the quote.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, love it. That's
And
good.
again, it comes down to what's important to you. Like, I have invested significantly over the years in my own health. So I understand. I mean, I would love it to be more accessible for people, but we're not in a position where we're going into the NHS anytime soon.
No, yeah.
And
Do you feel like there'll ever be a point where the NHS do employ the services of somebody like yourself and integrate?
I don't know. I mean, they are bringing in health coaching,
Mm-hmm.
which is a really good step forward. I don't quite know how they're using them, though. It's not something I've looked into massively. But I don't know, because there's dietitians in the NHS and they work, differently to how we work. It's not wrong. It's a different approach. I believe there's space for both of us. I just don't know if it will ever come to that point.
Would it go to some sort of like dentistry model, where you could either go private or sort of certain services are on the NHS?
More
I suppose that's the
discounted
start,
price.
isn't it?
More discounted price that they would subsidise. Like one thing I probably do need to research is the whole social prescribing model. I don't know if there is space for what we do in that. But even some, like a lot of companies now are doing, employee assistant programs, which have health insurance attached.
They do, don't they? Yeah.
Some of them will include nutritional therapy, some won't. So we're still a long way off. And also
That's
I think...
it. That's you're in.
That's it. That is one of my marketing strategies.
That is it. I feel like that's it,
But there's also...
that's it. I've worked it out.
You worked it out. Okay.
That's how you grow your business.
That's how I grow my business, yeah.
Well, you think, us for sure, we've got a platform called Heka or Heka, however you want to say it. And it is a wellbeing platform, isn't it? You get a certain amount of money per month. You get all of these wellbeing sort of things, from vitamins to weights.
Yeah.
And it's basically all about wellbeing.
Yeah.
Every business is about, the ESG side of things, isn't it? It's about well-being, it's about longevity, keeping hold of their employees.
Yeah.
There's a huge drive towards that.
There is, yeah.
People are desperate for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I can't think of anything that's on the market which is at that level. Yes, it might be a bit of a luxury and for the bigger businesses to start off with, but there is an element of what you do that you could feed into much, the private sectors, and people will pay for that.
Yeah.
That's such a huge benefit.
Especially because your aim is to increase productivity.
Yeah.
So they're literally going to increase the productivity of their staff. So why wouldn't they want to invest in that if they can?
And you almost kill like two birds, one stone there. You make a sale or get in with a business, you can throw down so many different plans to so many different people rather than just going to one person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I think there's a massive in there.
That's actually where I'm at right now, is exploring the corporate side a whole lot more.
Yeah.
And because I think if they can subsidize it or fully pay for
that's
it,
where the money is.
It's going to make it so much more accessible for individuals. So watch this space. We'll see what happens.
That is exciting. That's brilliant stuff. Cool. Well, we usually finish off with the same stuff, and I'll pass you over to Maddi first.
We do. I feel like you actually might have answered this question a bit earlier, actually, but we will ask you again. We want to gather as many definitions of success as possible.
Okay.
Speaking to lots of different business owners, entrepreneurs, on what they define success as, just so it's as accessible and people can relate to it as much as possible that are listening. So, first question, do you think you're successful professionally?
Ooh. If I go by my own definition of success, then yes. If I go by what I believe the world's definition is, no.
What's your own
Give us
definition?
both of those definitions.
That I'm doing what I set out to do. I run this business full time. I am getting to work with individuals with chronic illness and providing hope in the illness. I found journals from like years ago, and that was what I wanted. And I'm doing it. I've gone back to university. I retrained. I did a postgraduate diploma. Like, I've gone and done it, and I'm doing it. I have been successful. I am successful, sorry.
Brilliant.
That's great to hear that, because we've actually not heard that from so many people that have been so confident enough to say that.
No, they haven't. Or as vulnerable to say it. Yeah, because a lot of people don't want to give themselves a pat on the back and say, I am successful, because it's so, what's your definition of what the world thinks success is?
What I believe the world says success is metrics.
Yeah.
How much are you earning? What is your turnover? How many clients do you have? And so by that definition, I would feel that I'm not successful. But actually, what I'm finding and I'm learning is that the more I lean towards that, the unhappier I get. And the more I want to give business up. And actually, if I'm going to keep going, I have to learn what's important to me. And what's important to me, obviously, don't get me wrong, paying your bills is important, but I want impact.
Yeah.
I want to create impact. That's why I'm doing this.
Seems as though your passion, the flame for your business is your passion, and that's the success that's driving you forward to carry on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much, because it's been a tough time, but I'm still here. So
Yeah. Am I right in saying then the more people you can influence and affect, for the positive, the more successful you'll feel?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. I suspect it'll probably end up being that way. I'd hope not, but I also know it fluctuates. Know how you're feeling about things.
So maybe what we're learning is, I've just thought about this. It's yes isn't a sort of yes or no thing. I am. I'm not. It is more of a sliding scale of degrees of success.
Yeah, and I think those days you don't feel that you're being successful, because I think the goalposts will constantly change. That's the problem. You meet one goal, you move it forward, and actually it's going back to, why are you doing this? And that's what I have to remind myself of. Why am I doing this? Because I was that girl sat in the GP surgery being told I would never recover, and I'm like, it's not okay. It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. Just to finish off then, if somebody is that girl or boy, or man or woman, where you were however long ago, and they are faced with these problems, what's your best bit of advice for them?
Be kind to yourself. I know it's a cliche. You will grieve. You will grieve the life you thought you would have. Let yourself grieve, and know that whatever small steps you take, it's enough. It won't be a quick process. It's going to take a lot longer than you think. Probably my biggest thing. A bit like business, really.
Well, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks.